Okay, here we go. Hope we're live. It's a little difficult for me to check right now, but we're gonna make it work here. All right, there we go. So, I'm in Queens today. It's a part of town I've never been to before, and I got too much stuff to carry. It's hot today. The weather's been absolutely crazy. 21 day, it's over 60 today. Feels like it at least. Now, I just got here because I think it's important that we check out this story from the New York Times. I think a lot of people saw this story yesterday. This was, we've got a doctor who wrote an article about the apocalyptic conditions at the Elmhurst Hospital Center here in Queens. This is Dr. Colleen Smith, MD, and she's video recording in the ER here, which, well, let's just take a step back. This was like the lead story on the New York Times, and it's kind of gone all around the world. A lot of people emailed me and they felt, oh, this is fake news. And that's fine. I think people should question everything that they see, whether it's the New York Times or Crowdsource the truth. But what we need to do really is break it down and understand what about it is fake. So the first problem is a lot of people will maybe not know, but HIPAA laws protect the rights of patients. You know, you're not allowed to just give out patient information, and that certainly includes photographing them in the hospital. Now, we only saw the feet in that video, but I've spoken to several MDs about this, and they found that absolutely shocking that a doctor would, you know, run a camera and be video recording inside the hospital. Okay, I think that's it over there. I mean, it was just so outrageous to these doctors that I showed that to, that they almost couldn't believe it. I mean, the analogy in my mind is like if we were shooting Amazing Spider-Man and the director called action, the AD called action, and suddenly I busted out my iPhone and started snapping flash photographs of Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, I would be immediately fired and chased out of there. And it's just something that anybody in that professional setting would never do. It's even more serious in a hospital setting. So that's strange. Why would the doctor be video recording? Okay, so here's the Hope Pavilion from the Elmhurst Hospital Center. We did see big long line, which was definitely contradictory to what I saw as I've been going around New York City. Here in Queens, I mean, I haven't ever been here before. 41st Avenue. Streets are pretty dead. It's tough for me to gauge, you know, what the activity would be like here. Normally, for people who are from out of town, or, you know, maybe not from the United States, or maybe just not familiar with New York City, there are 5 boroughs, right? You've got Manhattan, which is what most people think of when they're talking about New York City. That's the Empire State Building, the World Trade Center. That's where I live. That's where we've been touring the past several days. And then you've got Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island. Those are the 5 boroughs of New York City. So technically, anything happening in any of those places is happening in New York City. But as you can see, you know, Queens is a much different type of place than Manhattan. We don't have the sprawling skyscrapers. It's more of a kind of a residential part of town. Many people who work in Manhattan will live in Queens. Now, we're starting to approach the hospital grounds here. We can see, I guess, some parking facilities and stuff. So we're here in Queens, and it's important for people to know it only took me about 20 minutes to get here on the subway, And obviously there's stops, and an ambulance or something could probably get from here to Manhattan, particularly given that there's virtually no traffic, pretty quickly. I mean, I don't know, you'd have to drive it, but maybe 10 minutes. So what we heard in this New York Times story from Dr. Colleen Smith was that it's apocalyptic conditions. 13 people died in a day. That's definitely terrible. She was saying there was not enough gear here at the hospital, including these critical respirators that we've heard so much about. She's touring the room, and she says they ran out of respirators. There's not enough respirators. It's important to note that the New York Times itself says the head of New York City Public Hospitals has denied that Elmhurst ever came close to running out of ventilators. So now, this is a problem, because who are we supposed to trust? Do we trust Dr. Smith, or do we trust the official statement from the hospital? They can't both be true. One of them says there's not enough ventilators. The other says, what are you talking about? There's plenty of ventilators. So someone must be telling the wrong story. Let's not say they're lying. Let's presume that there's some confusion there. Perhaps there's another answer, but that's a major problem. The other issue is, yeah, we've got Dr. Castor texting me right now that a doctor could lose their medical license for photographing inside the art. Now, this is the Community Medical Center here. Is this the main entrance to the hospital? Community Medical Center, Elmhurst Hospital. So there's nobody there. There's nobody here. People are going to have to kind of reconcile where we are right now with what the New York Times showed us yesterday. We could see some vending machines inside there. It looks pretty empty to me. I don't know what section we're looking at. Here's a doctor. Where's the main entrance to the hospital? Excuse me, doctor. Where's the main entrance to the hospital? Have you been overrun with coronavirus patients here?
We have a number of cases, yes.
Number of cases, but where is everybody right now? Where's the main entrance? That's the main entrance?
There's one entrance, the other entrance is on Broadway.
Thank you. Okay, so that's one of the main entrances. I don't know, that doctor didn't look too bent out of shape to me. You know, it's also important that we recognize some facts and details about Dr. Smith. So I don't know if people got a chance to see the the New York Times article. Check it out. I'm trying to find the spot where she was standing. I Googled this before I left the apartment so everybody could see. If you just put in her name and the hospital, there's a lot of news. I mean, people picked up this New York Times story around the world. Take a look over her shoulder there. Can we see what that sign says? It's a little difficult to read, so I went to Google Earth, and people can see how close. This map is showing Crowdsource the Truth, where I am, and it's just a short little distance over here to Elmhurst, Queens, where I am right now. And you can easily find it on the map where Dr. Smith was giving that report for the New York Times. I found it interesting that over her shoulder, behind her, is a Chinese restaurant. It's called New Taste of China. I mean, that's very probably a coincidence. There's a lot of Chinese restaurants around in Queens, but certainly the New York Times could have selected any location to photograph Dr. Smith in, and they chose that. Now, in NYU Film School, they would tell us that's subtext. That's not the text, that's the subtext. You know, you go watch Citizen Kane or whatever, and there's things in the script, and then there's subtle little things like how the guy is framed in the door. What does rosebud mean? Okay, there we see a line. So I want people to know that Dr. Smith is a self-proclaimed simulation enthusiast, and she's a specialist in medical simulations. So there are a lot of ambulances here, and there are a lot of people in line. But see, my question is, do you know, have they been canvassing the neighborhood, encouraging people to be tested for coronavirus? Do you know how all these people got here? Did they announce free tests or something? You don't know? It's so many more people than we've seen at other hospitals around in New York City. Any idea why that is? Sorry?
I'm not sure.
Have you been responding to a lot of coronavirus calls?
Absolutely.
How do you know they have coronavirus?
I'm gonna have to ask them.
Ask them? So the patients are the ones telling you they have coronavirus, is that it? No. Okay. All right, thanks. So, okay. You know, the patients know, right? Yeah. So, Dr. Smith is a simulation expert, a medical simulation expert. And, you know, she says there's not enough ventilators, but the official word from the hospital is there's plenty. I mean, again, we see a lot of ambulances waiting around, and we see some people in line here. Definitely looks not as dense as it was the other day. Do you ladies live in this neighborhood? You live in this neighborhood? ¿Hablas inglés?
No.
¿Vivas tú en este neighborhood?
No, estoy esperando a mi papá porque mi papá ingresó recién.
I'm out of Spanish, unfortunately. All right, thank you. Be well. I should have studied harder in high school. Excuse me, officers. Excuse me, officers. Did you guys see this New York Times article yesterday where there was tons of people here and the doctor said they're running out of ventilators, but the hospital said they're not? Are you guys aware of that? Do you know how all these people got here? Did they offer free tests or something, or they all have coronavirus?
These people here doing testing, sir. That's all they're doing.
Sorry?
Testing.
Testing. Were you guys offered free tests, or how did you guys come to decide to come here?
All right. Stop there. You gotta go.
I'm not allowed to talk to people in public?
No, sir.
Why is that?
You're on hospital grounds, sir.
Hospital grounds, the street right here? Not even on the sidewalk? Not even, this is hospital grounds? It is. Right here in the street. There's the sidewalk, and there's the hospital. So it's a lot less people here today. Is there any way that I can speak to a representative of the hospital? Do you guys know?
What's the question?
Sorry?
What's the question?
Can I speak to a representative of the hospital? Do you know? I cannot?
We're able to do that now.
What?
You're not gonna be able to speak to anybody now, sir. Everybody just focus on the
I don't know, I can't hear what that guy's saying with the mumbling. Excuse me, do you work for the hospital?
Oh, I'm sorry, no speak English.
¿Trabajas en hospital too?
No, yo no trabajo en el hospital.
Gracias. Do you know how I can speak to somebody from the hospital? Do you know how I can speak to somebody from the hospital? Have you guys been bringing a lot of coronavirus patients here? Okay, thanks. So the question is, was Dr. Smith participating in a simulation that was facilitated by the New York Times and perhaps scheduled to occur yesterday? Why, if this hospital is overrun with patients, would they not stick one or two or half of them? They talk about 13 people dying and they're overrun and they don't have enough ventilators. What if they put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, 9? What if they put 9 people in these ambulances and drove them for 10 minutes into Manhattan over to maybe New York Presbyterian, maybe to what was it, Mount Sinai, we got Langone. I mean, if this place is overrun and those places are not, why wouldn't they just take them in there? Oh, here's a news crew. Let's see what these people are saying.
One more thing, please.
algo especial que tienen que decir. A los que están trabajando con Uber, tienen que tener sus guantes, su mascarilla en su mano, en su boca, el tapaboca en su boca y las mascarillas, los guantes en sus manos, porque también está haciendo transportar el virus a varias familias que sienten que están aseguradas en su casa.
¿Dónde está su negocio?
El 82 de la Rusia.
¿Es muy lejos?
Es aquí adelante, al lado del puerto.
Univision. Fake news in Espanol. They just struck one of my videos this morning. Copyright claim from Univision for a YouTube video, the 5th video I ever made for Crowdsource the Truth. Are you guys talking to a lot of coronavirus patients out here?
We just talked to one. She was in the car, this car parked right here.
And how'd she look to you?
She was just,
Did you see the? I guess this is mostly Spanish-speaking neighborhood. I don't really know too much about this neighborhood.
are you from the news company?
I'm from my own YouTube channel, but I'm definitely interested.
I'm trying to get people, you would like to know where it's easier to see me?
Say again?
I would like to try to get people to make this suit for themselves. It'll save their lives.
You think so?
Can we go somewhere where
Well, you can talk to me right here. This is fine. What did you think about that New York Times article where the doctor said there's not enough ventilators, but the hospital said that's not true?
I don't know, 'cause I'm not in that hospital. I know that a lot of doctors are saying there's not enough, a lot of healthcare workers do not have enough protective gear.
Right.
And that's why, and they're waiting for all these face masks and everything, but I have a solution here, and anyone can make this for less than $10.
Well, we don't know its effectiveness in
We know the
keeping
EMT
out the
was right here, and
virus.
he told me this is absolutely effective what I have right now, 100%.
Okay.
The virus cannot go through plastic.
Okay.
You can touch your face. The problem is when you get home, you have to wash it with soap and water. You have to constantly wash your gloves with soap and water as if they were your regular hands.
Right.
The coronavirus will go to the outside of
Are you
the
a
skin.
doctor?
What?
Are you a
Yeah,
doctor?
I do work as volunteer in healthcare.
Do you work in this hospital?
No, I do not.
Okay. I don't want to give people advice that hasn't been vetted by
why
a
don't
doctor.
you ask them? There was an EMT here. You can ask a doctor. This is plastic.
Okay.
The coronavirus
Thanks very much.
does not go through.
Do you work in the hospital? No? I won't talk to you.
People should make their own suits here like this.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right.
So have you guys seen a crazy amount of activity around the hospital here?
A lot of ambulances coming and going.
Sorry?
A lot of ambulances coming and going.
Ambulances coming and going? That would seem to mean a lot. Did you see that New York Times article yesterday? You know that there's a doctor in there said there's not enough ventilators, but the hospital said that's not
Did
true?
not see it.
You work for NBC News?
No, I do not.
Oh. All right. So what is this?
I don't know what this is.
Oh, you're not with that?
No.
Oh, got it. All right. So that's NBC News, but he's just hanging around, loitering. So have you guys seen a lot of activity around this hospital?
I mean, what you see here, pretty much, are people in their cars. That's about it.
Uh-huh. Do your Univision viewers know that the New York Times article published a statement from Dr. Smith saying there's not enough ventilators, but the hospital said that's not true?
I guess we do.
Sorry?
Who are you with?
I'm with myself, Crowdsource the Truth on YouTube. You know, Univision tried to strike one of my videos this morning on YouTube. It's from 3 years ago. Why would they do that?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
Maybe they
You
don't
should
like
call
the
them.
message of the truth getting out and they want to spread a story that's going to scare people? Maybe. I don't know. The video they struck didn't even have anything to do with coronavirus. It was Donald Trump reading WikiLeaks. I didn't even realize it came from Univision, and they had no proper claim in striking it. It was fair use, a piece of newsworthy material included for commentary. You work in the hospital? Is it apocalyptic in there? Did you know that Dr. Smith said there's not enough ventilators, but the hospital officially said that's not true? Did you hear about that?
I'm not sure about it.
Sorry?
I'm not sure about it, sir.
You're not sure about what?
I'm not sure about what's going on about the ventilator situation right now.
Do you know Dr. Smith? She works in the hospital.
Yes, I do.
Do you know that she's a simulation specialist?
Yes,
So is she doing a simulation or is this real?
this is real.
Okay, so why would she say there's not enough ventilators, but then the hospital officially says there are?
I'm not sure. The situation is changing every day, so I'm not sure.
Isn't it illegal for a doctor to video record inside the ER or the ICU?
You should ask her, sir.
I should ask her. How do I talk to her?
Contact the hospital.
How do I do that? Can I follow you in to
No,
speak
you
to
can't
someone?
follow me in, sir.
Where can I speak to someone in the hospital?
Yes, you can call the media center.
The media center. Is it here? Can I walk to it? Can I walk to it? Can't walk to it. All right.
How you doing, Mr. Corona? I love you, Mr. Corona. Corona.
Interesting. He loves Corona. So here are the police. I don't know. I mean, it could be true that there are people in there dying, or this could just be a free clinic for coronavirus screening. I mean, if you sent out an email blast for coronavirus screening right now, would this many people show up? How do I speak to somebody in the hospital? Let's go to that other entrance where nobody is and see what they say. So I've got a couple questions about that stuff. Yeah, I think I showed the video that the hospital says that's not true. So I'm curious to know, why would the New York Times run a story? They're contradicting themselves. It doesn't matter what's true. The New York Times is telling us that the doctor says there's not enough ventilators, and then they add that little caveat that says the head of NYC Public Hospitals denied that Elmhurst has ever come close to running out of ventilators. So what does that indicate to us? Is there a communication breakdown between the hospital and the officials making the decisions for the hospital? Is the hospital lying to us? And if they're lying about that, what else might they be lying about? Is the doctor conducting a simulation? And is she acting when she tells us that there's not enough ventilators? Let's see if we can talk to these guys. North Shore University Hospital. Oh, you see, this thing is kind of not working properly. These guys might be annoyed if I try to talk to them, but these don't look like ambulances with dying people in them. Did you guys see that New York Times article yesterday? Did you know that the doctor said there's not enough ventilators, but the official word from the hospital is that that was untrue? Were you aware of that?
Well, we don't work for the city, so...
You don't work for the city?
I'm not sure what's going on.
Do you guys know Dr. Colleen Smith? Do you know anybody that I could speak to in the hospital, like media people?
No, sorry.
They said this was apocalyptic conditions. You guys look like you're sort of just waiting here. Is there an apocalypse happening?
A lot of calls. I would take it seriously.
I'm taking it seriously.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to run down some of these contradictory things I'm seeing. Like, I would think if there's an apocalypse and this hospital is overrun, how long do you think it would take you guys in an ambulance with the lights on to get from here to, say, New York Presbyterian with no traffic on the roads like it is right now?
What, and Queens on Booth? New York Presby, Queens?
Downtown Manhattan.
Oh,
13 minutes.
Yeah.
13 minutes?
15 minutes.
Okay. So if there were a coronavirus patient in there and not enough equipment, would it be unreasonable to put that person in an ambulance and drive them to another hospital that's not so overloaded?
Probably.
Probably would, right? They're building this triage hospital at the Javits Center. Obviously, they're planning on moving people from hospitals to there. So the notion of one hospital in New York being overrun shouldn't be able to get to the point of an apocalypse if they have all you guys here with all these ambulances waiting to move people around the city, right?
Well, we're 911. We respond to the 911 calls. Transporting from one hospital to another hospital would not be...
Yeah, it would be somebody else.
Yeah.
That would be Presby, maybe they're...
But I mean, in the event of an emergency, they couldn't repurpose you guys to do something?
But then who's going to answer the calls that go out here?
Sorry about that?
Who's going to answer the calls going out
Okay, so you guys stay here, but we got all these FDNY ambulances. There's got to be some other
here?
ambulances.
Yesterday, we reached over 7,000 calls in New York City.
You answered 7,000 calls?
Well, not me personally, but...
The ambulances answered 7.
So,
How many of those calls are people who are just watching the news and getting nervous and thinking they have it and
I
calling an
haven't
ambulance?
been working the last week, so I can't really comment on it.
Yeah.
We're going to go...
We can't talk about, like, the patient.
Got it. All right. Well, listen,
But it's
fellas,
serious.
be safe. And have you noticed, how long have you been an EMT?
5 years.
And has there been a huge uptick this year versus other years?
Oh, yeah.
How many would you say?
With cases? With what? Uptick of what?
In other words, this time of the year last year, did you do half as many calls, a third?
Oh,
one?
I mean, with the pandemic, there's been more calls.
Many more?
Many more.
Twice as many?
Yeah, more than
5 times as many?
Not that much. Not yet, but it's getting, if you watch the news, it's getting worse and worse.
If you watch the news, it's getting worse and worse. But when you come to the hospital and actually see what's going on, it seems like perhaps the news is driving panic.
Well, I would say I can't confirm or deny it, but it is busier. I can
Do you know if
confirm
they went around the neighborhood offering people to come in and get tested? We don't know if any of those people are sick or not.
that. Yeah, I mean, they're coming in at their own free will to get tested. They
So
don't
the
look at
hospital
it.
announced there's tests, come and get them, or people just know it's a
I don't know
hospital?
what New York City Health and Hospitals does. I work for Northwell, so I'm a
appreciate
private
it.
hospital. We work with under FDMY because they take, they're in control of the city. So, but take care.
I appreciate you talking to me. Be safe. And thanks for what you're doing, man.
Thank you.
That was good info. I mean, apocalyptic conditions with one person dying per hour and people from Queens to London getting freaked out because the news, the New York Times, which, if you type in Dr. Colleen Smith, Elmhurst Hospital, go to Google, there's a lot of people who picked up that New York Times story and ran it all over the world. You got to click on news to get most of them, but when you click on news with that doctor's name, you can see that it's NBC picked it up, BuzzFeed, of course, picked it up. It even went to the Daily Mail. So, the Daily Mail can reliably and confidently report that the New York Times said X, Y, and Z, and everybody knows the telephone game. When the doctor says there's no ventilators, does it ever make it to the Daily Mail that the hospital denied that? Or do they just think, oh my God, New York is terrible, it's an apocalypse, there's no ventilators, and hundreds of people are dying, and they have refrigerator trucks and everything. Look, I'm not trying to minimize the fact that people are dying, but I do believe that's what happens at hospitals every day. We need to know a little bit more about this. So the emergency center is right over there where I was. Now, I haven't been here that long, but I haven't seen any ambulances pulling up with people running out with victims, in dire apocalyptic conditions. I mean, you read the New York Times and you hear Elmhurst, Queens is in apocalyptic conditions at this hospital, so bad they need refrigerator trucks to store all the victims. That evokes certain images in my mind. I would imagine ambulances being all around, coming in and out. I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't have enough arms to look at comments right now. I would be very interested to know what people think about this. Let me see if I can work something out here. Where do I even have that other phone? This is way more difficult than it looks. I hope people appreciate that. We've got some great shows coming up later today for sponsors. If you are a sponsor of Crowdsource the Truth, on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, you get access to a huge array of sponsor-exclusive content, including this afternoon's show, Discovery CSI with David Hawkins. David speaks a lot about simulations, pandemic simulations being run by the BBC. I would think if there was an emergency patient in there, the lights might be on. They might be going, a little bit faster. I don't know. So far, every EMT I've spoken to has told me that the patients they've seen are self-diagnosing with coronavirus. Okay, comments. Love how people who work for the media act like YouTube doesn't exist. I love it too, Holly. Those people are going to get put out of business. They know I exist. They're trying to strike the videos. Actually, that's another good reason why people should get onto subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. That's why I started that, because they were striking the videos. Do you work in the hospital? Do you work in the hospital?
Yeah.
But are you a doctor or?
I can't talk to you anyway.
Okay. Because it would be illegal to film anything in the hospital, right?
Yes.
Why would a doctor do that in the emergency room or the ICU?
I have no idea.
Seems like something that would get a doctor fired, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Huge violation of the rules. Is it apocalyptic in there?
What?
Is it apocalyptic in there?
Yeah, for the other side.
It's apocalyptic on the other side?
Yeah.
But this
Not
side's
here.
okay?
No, everything is okay. It's the pharmacy.
Okay,
Yeah, but
thanks.
the other side is the problem.
Okay, well, it was a confined apocalypse, perhaps. Bellevue Hospital will soon be overwhelmed by people going batshit crazy. Well, that might be true. Sneak in Mark Roberts, I will not. I mean, it's illegal to film inside a hospital. Oh, wait a minute. They might even get upset about filming on hospital grounds, but I think that the sidewalk is public grounds. Those cops seem to think the street was hospital grounds. Yeah, there's no security. I mean, does this seem like a pandemic to people? Or does this seem like perhaps Dr. Colleen is doing a simulation? I'm not going to give it out, but I did obtain her personal phone number and called her last night. No answer. I'm sure she's being overwhelmed. She said she wants to talk to the media, so I tweeted this video at her. I don't know if she's going to like it or want to speak to me about it. Go in. I can't film if I go in there, so there's not too much point. Harry, I don't agree with you. New York City is one of the greatest cities in the world, and you know, people have been to Madame Curie, where are you? Yes. It's only a little apocalypse, the Smith. It's a mild apocalypse. I don't know. To me, apocalypse would mean that doctor would not stop and talk to me or be walking around with his mask up, or we would have, even in the 30 minutes I've been here, seen at least one ambulance with the sirens on, and, you know, I don't know. Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. See what's going on inside Mark Roberts? Now wait a minute. Mark Roberts. I think I know who you are. Yeah. You're supposed to be blocked, dude. Is this who I think it is? Let's take a look. No, different Mark Roberts. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know. This might be a little boring. See, there's a big delay here. World reset. I agree with that. It's dead. Right. This is not a lot of activity at the hospital in my view. And people who live in Queens or are familiar with this neighborhood can tell just from looking around if this is a lot of activity in the neighborhood. I don't think it is. I don't know. I think I'm ready to leave here. This is kind of an adequate investigation. I think the next part of this investigation is to ask the doctor, "You're pregnant, ma'am. Do you speak English?" No. Okay. No English. Okay. I imagine if you're pregnant, this is something to be concerned about. Yeah, no, I got it. Not you, Mark. It was a different guy. Sorry about that. It's cool to have the comments and be able to interact with everybody while I do this. Let me see. I'm not going to go inside the hospital because they're not going to let me film in there, so the show would end if I do that. And I don't want to give my mother a heart attack. She's probably already close to that just from the proximity. I think going inside there would do little more than upset people who I don't want to upset. I mean, they're power washing something here. I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, here's an ambulance kind of backing up, leisurely pace. They got a lot of ambulances. If the hospital is overrun, I definitely think there's a lot of hospitals in a very close proximity to where we are that they could move people to. Oops, I'm sort of like walking around about to get hit. Luckily, I'm close to the hospital. Oh yeah, where is the Chinese restaurant? There's another ambulance going 2 miles an hour. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter where that Chinese restaurant is. We saw it. The point that I wanted to make is that it seemed to me like they could have easily taken a photograph of the doctor with the ambulances as the backdrop, but they chose the Chinese restaurant. And like I said, in making a film or a production, you got people poring over every aspect of the frame, taking little pieces of garbage off the street that don't look good, adjusting the way garbage cans look. If anybody's ever been on a professional film set, there's a lot of attention going into every detail. Certainly if you didn't want a Chinese restaurant sign in the background of your very important dramatic shot, you'd just make a left. Do you work in the hospital?
I know, but I can't talk to you.
Is in there? How could you be out here?
I can't talk to you.
What do you think about the New York Times article where Dr. Smith said there's not enough ventilators, but the hospital said that's not true? Do you know Dr. Smith?
You know I can't talk to you. I mean, you have a camera
But if Dr.
phone.
Smith is running a simulation and lying to the public, isn't that something we should know? Seems like a lot of people can't talk. "5G is something that a lot of people have been talking about. Teresa's asking, what does 5G mean? It's the 5th generation of cellular data technology. And the thing that has people worried about it is that it uses very, short wavelength microwave technology, like kind of the stuff you use to cook food in your microwave oven." Do you work in the hospital?
Yes.
Do you know Dr. Colleen Smith?
No.
Are you aware that she told the New York Times that there's not enough ventilators, but the hospital said that's not true?
I saw some part of it.
But who's telling the truth, Dr. Smith or the hospital?
I have no idea.
Is it apocalyptic in there? How do you have time to stop and talk to me? There must be tons of people dying.
Well, I'm on my lunch now, but it's crazy inside here.
Okay. Is it always crazy? It's a hospital.
But not like this.
What, is it all coronavirus people?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I cannot give you that information.
Thanks. Why so afraid to talk? Because if it's a simulation and they said don't tell anybody, it stands to reason that the employees would have specific instructions not to talk to me or anybody asking a lot of stupid questions that they don't want to answer. That's why they don't want to talk, I think. The battery is running low here. This is disappointing. I think I need a new battery for this phone. I've got it hooked up to an external battery in the sound recorder, and that's supposed to run it for hours and hours. Ooh, it's dropping rapidly. So we might end pretty soon. I mean, this doesn't look like that many people. Keep in mind, social distancing, everybody's 6 feet away. If this were prior to, February, this would look like a much smaller group of people because they'd just be jammed up together in there. I think these are people here to get tested. Have you been inside the hospital?
No.
Are you working there? No. Just live in the neighborhood?
Yes.
Do you know if did they say like, hey, come over to the hospital and get tested for coronavirus? How did all these people, anybody, how did all these people know to come here and get tested? They must have announced.
Oh, it's all over the city. What are you talking
Come here and get tested?
This is... Who are you?
I'm Jason Goodman. Who are you?
In other words, are you from a news source or something like that?
I am. I have a YouTube channel called Crowdsource the Truth.
Good. I'd rather not be interviewed, but thank you.
Okay, so they've announced it all over the city that this hospital is doing testing, and people responded to that announcement, and I guess came here. Wow, the battery's dropping crazy fast. 10% now. Something's wrong. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to have to wrap it up here, and I'm going to get back to the apartment to get ready for Discovery CSI with David Hawkins. That show is scheduled to begin at 1 o'clock, so hopefully I'll have an opportunity to be back on time and not delay David's show. We're going to be talking about this pandemic simulation that was run by the BBC. Are people aware of that? David's going to be talking about that, and then later today we've got John Cullen. This evening, John Cullen was the guy who did all that incredible work on the Las Vegas investigation. People should go to patreon.com/IamJohnCullen to watch John's show, and patreon.com/reverse CSI storyboards to get David Hawkins. You can, of course, get all these shows by sponsoring Crowdsource the Truth on subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. There's a lot of ambulances sitting around in New York. I don't know if there's an apocalypse happening or not, but it seems that the hospital has a different view of what's going on than the doctor does. I wonder what they'll say about the violation of HIPAA laws, videotaping inside the ICU. I certainly don't want a good doctor to get fired, but if we've got a simulated doctor who is helping the fake news New York Times drive international panic, that needs to be known. Thanks for watching, everybody.